everybody, and welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, Divine Chick Collective. Thanks for joining me on another rambling. Before I get into the topic of today's video, don't forget to like, leave me a comment, subscribe. But when you subscribe, ensure that your notifications, the little bell, is ticked on so you don't miss my videos. All right, so today I'm actually going to share a little bit of a different type of information, a little bit more personal, something that's more near and dear to my heart. And hopefully I can get some resolutions to this at some point, and then I'll be able to share that with you as well. So where does it go? So my history, share a bit about my history. Both of my grandmothers are alive. Thank God. Both of my grandfathers, well, I'll first say my mother's father died when she was quite young. It's quite young, very young. And my father's father, I have never met. And I was told that he also died. I'll start there. And I'll tell you a little bit more. My grandmother had, let me see now, had 7 children. She gave birth to 7 kids. And I had to count, guys, because thank God, she was able to survive 7 births, because not one of them is a twin. But I had to count because one of the stories I'm going to get into actually relates to my aunts. So I'm going to recount a story that I was told, and you can let me know what your thoughts are, or also what else could I do in a situation like this. So my mother tells me a story where when she was quite young, after her father had already passed away, family members in the household started developing symptoms, gastrointestinal symptoms. They were vomiting. And so this is maybe months to maybe a year or so after my grandfather had already passed away. So not relating. And so symptoms were started to exhibit in the household. She woke up, let's say the next morning, and she was unable to wake one of her younger sisters. We'll call her Nin. No, call her Deuce. Call her Deuce. She was unable to wake up her sisters, and she tried frantically to wake up her sisters. And she was told by the older persons in the home to leave her alone and let her sleep. A couple of hours passed on, and she went on the street. She saw an older family member not in that household and said, "Hi, XYZ. Deuce is still sleeping, and it's 10 o'clock now." That older family member came back to the house and realized that Deuce was pretty much comatose at that point. She was unable to be awoken. At that time, it was decided that Deuce would be taken to the hospital along with everybody else who lived in that household. And they were taken to the hospital. I'm told that this is Linstead Hospital at the time. And everybody was admitted in the hospital. The entire family was admitted in the hospital, but not the entire family was exhibiting GI symptoms. Not everybody was vomiting. Mother was sick. 2 older sisters were sick. My mother was not sick. Deuce of course, was sick, and we're not able to awaken her. And the other sister in the home that was also taken to the hospital, the youngest at the time, Nin, we'll call her Elaine. Well, her name is Elaine, could call her Nin. She was not sick. And it's really important that you understand, at least what I was told from my perspective, who was actually sick. So mother was sick, two older daughters were sick. My mother was not sick. Deuce, who were not able to awake, was obviously sick. Elaine was not sick. Soon after the family was admitted to the hospital, they were told that Deuce passed away, that she died. And at this time, from my mother's recollection, she would have been 5 years old and Elaine would have been 4 years old. So they were told that Deuce had passed away. And my mother also advised me that even though her mother was sick, her aunt and a cousin actually verified that Deuce had passed away. Now, it's really hard for me to wrap my head around the situation because the way things operate in 2020 is so very different than what would have occurred in the mid-1970s. And it's important that you understand this is the mid-1970s we're talking about in Jamaica. So there was no funeral. And from what I can hear, and this is from my mother's recollection, that the hospital would have taken, if you are unable to bury your loved ones, the hospitals often would take on that additional pressure, and those individuals, your deceased loved ones, would often be buried on the hospital grounds or compounds. However, there is no funeral that she can recall, so that didn't happen. So there's an assumption there that the hospital buried Deuce. Now, during the hospital stay, still, my mother tells me that at times she would go to the different area where Elaine was, and she would play with her, because at that time, and Elaine was placed in a crib, even though she wasn't a baby. And up to this day, you'll see in most Jamaican hospitals that there is sort of a crib setting for kids, not just for babies, but for kids. And I think the main reason for that is really for restraint purposes, to contain the children, to keep eye on them. And if really that's the only way we have of doing things, then we just have to ensure the safety of people's children. So absolutely no problem with that. So this was a 4-year-old that was in a crib, but my mother said when she would go and play with her, she would remove her from the crib and they would play on horses. And she reminds me that Elaine was not sick. So this would happen for days on end, and my mother would say the nurses would sometimes sort of tell her to get away or to go somewhere else, because my mother was a very rebellious person, and I'm sure she caused havoc in that hospital. So I will fast forward those stories, but I think it's important that you can at least hear everything that I know from my own perspective. So fast forward to one of the days where my mother went and played with her sister. The nurses told her to go back into her area now because it was time for lunch. So she left her sister and went back to have lunch. And she says this was upstairs. After she had lunch, she came back downstairs That's all she can remember. And at that time was told that Elaine had died. And I guess what's also important for everybody to understand is that they were told that Elaine had died as well. However, no adult family member actually saw Elaine's body, and no family member verified that Elaine had actually passed away. Now, that baffles me to no end, and I don't know if that's just a part of the system. At the time, it's really hard for me to wrap my head around being told that a family member had died and not verifying that, or not even, it's hard for me to wrap my head around not having, not even just the capacity, but not having the ability to bury your loved ones. And I'm sure at the time that, you know, my family must not have been able to bury that child or children. It must have. I come from very humble beginnings. My family my family is very diverse, but I will divulge. I have to admit that I come from very, very, very humble beginnings, that no time in my life have I been fed with a golden spoon. My family is poor. I will not say that we're poor. I will say that I still, have even a lot of family members, not just a bit, a lot of family members who are still poor. And in some ways, I'd actually say, so am I. But I'm just saying all that to say that I know that a part of this story and the happenings of the stories and even the outcomes of the stories is because of poverty. And I completely recognize that, whether it's financially, emotionally, whether it's, just having the capacity to understand and to advocate. I know that played a huge part in the outcome of the story. So here, I was told, yes, that my aunt passed away. And I was also told that nobody actually saw my aunt's body. And my mother was adamant, being probably only maybe 8 or 9 years old at the time, was adamant that her sister was not sick. And there's no way that she would have died except for something acute like a heart attack immediately. My mother has been adamant since I know myself that her sister was not sick. Now, my questions would be then to my grandmother and everybody else, why did nobody go and verify? Why did nobody see this baby? And it is just up until a few days ago that it dawned on me, or I would remember, that they were ill as well. I mean, by God, somebody would have to restrain me. And in fact, they had to restrain my mother. They physically had to tie my mother to a bed because she was adamant that her sister could not have died. And they restrained her, and they later, a few days later, discharged her because she was not sick. So I've grown to hear my mother's story, and I can't help, knowing who my mother is, to believe that her recollection, if it's not 100% accurate, that it's almost accurate. My mother has verified to me that while she didn't see the body of Deuce, she knows that Deuce had died. Her auntie had told her, her cousin had told her. But my mother is adamant that she left Elaine playing on the horsey, went to eat, came back, and was told she had died. And knowing now that the older children and my grandmother were also ill, then it might beg to question. It gives me a better understanding why that might have happened in the short term. In the long term, I still don't understand. And I have so many questions personally, being in my 30s, about what happened during this timing, where my aunt is. And if she truly had died, I would love to know and to have that closure so that I no longer think of her as living and that she can actually rest in peace. She can truly rest in peace if she truly had died. But I don't believe my auntie had actually died. Now, I will tell you a little bit more about what has happened over the years. So my mother then tells me of another story where someone from the community who was attending Dintel High School in Linstead was in Yorton. And this high schooler, who is a female, came back to the community and to my mother's family to say that she was in Yorton and her little girl called out to her, said, "Sharon." And by the time she turned around, she saw a little girl being forced inside of a home. She also said that she did go back to that location a few times and never saw the little girl again. Now, I don't know if people's minds are playing tricks on them, but when I heard a story like that, with nothing to gain from that individual, I have to think that maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe. I hope there's some truth to it. They, over the years, I think others have assisted my grandmother in putting the story on the airway and asking for help to find Elaine. However, that has never led to any true sightings or any true leads or anything. Mind you, here we're facing two stories. One, if she is alive, where is she? Or two, even if she died, how did she die? Why did she die? My grandmother is adamant as well that she at the time wasn't sick. Over the years, once I'm aware of my own and was told the story, I personally have searched for my auntie. It's something that keeps me up some nights, literally searching, whether it's searching archived Jamaican newspapers, just doing random Google searches with the name. I've tried Facebook. In fact, and I'll share this with you guys, there are persons on my Facebook with the name of my aunt because my mother told me that I would have resembled her sister. Now, I can't tell, how true this is. Remember, this is the memory of a child. But I have searched high, I've searched low for my aunt from Jamaica to UK to the States. And I have persons on my Facebook with the name of my aunt, and they have no idea why they're on my Facebook. But I added them so that I would look to see if there's any resemblance of me. It's something that's pretty incredible when you miss somebody you don't know. I don't know, I've felt, sorry guys, I don't know how to edit videos, so I'm just gonna keep rolling. How do you miss, or you feel that emptiness of people you've never met? And I can wholeheartedly say that my aunt, whether physically still here on earth or has ascended, has been missed immensely. When you think of how the love and comfort of an aunt could have enhanced my life as a young woman, I feel the loss of her. I can't imagine what, growing up would have been for my mother. And even I can't imagine, thankfully, I still have my mother with me, what it's like to feel like there's a part of you that's somewhere and you really truly believe that they haven't gone, that they're still around. And my grandmother, who has lost not one but 2 children during one hospitalization. I can't imagine. Like, I have no words. I have no words for that. But so I'm going to close this video off. But before I close this video off, just, in the hopes that maybe someone might be watching this video and heard of a story similar to that, or have some older person, older than me, older person in their family who is adopted, or was brought into the family and you don't know where they came from, or I don't know. But I'm recording this in hopes that one day one of 2 things will happen. I'll verify that my aunt has passed, and I'm okay with that. Or I verify that my aunt is truly alive. And that would be something that's indescribable. And people on my YouTube or wherever you might be watching this video, I'll just share that my oldest uncle passed away July 3rd of this year, 2020. And so of course we went back and during that time and buried him, and I kept, and even his the eulogy I wrote and read, and I keep thinking about where my aunt is, and what a travesty it would be for my grandmother who's still living, and one to pass away not knowing where her child is, and for my mother to go on and age and not knowing where her sister is. So I'm reaching out to you guys. I'm reaching out to you guys. So hopefully somebody somewhere, anywhere, can help. So my aunt's name, as I mentioned, is Elaine Kennedy. And in the last few days, I was told that her middle name is Violet. And this is all from recollection. So this is why sometimes I will speak and not be strong in what I'm saying, because I have no way to verify this. But I'm told that my aunt's name is Elaine Violet Kennedy. That could have changed if she truly was taken. If she was taken, that could have changed. The event happened, and this is from some faint memories as well, would have been 1975 or 1976, somewhere there. And as I mentioned, the hospital was the Linstead Hospital at the time, which at that time actually admitted patients. So Elaine Violet Kennedy. So now Elaine would be, if she is alive, would be about 50 years old. That's an approximate age. She'd be about 50 years old, because this is from their memory. So I would say give or take 2 years up or 2 years down. I'm going to say she should be about 50 years old. And I don't think there's anything. I would have suspected that if anything goes remotely like this, that she would have been in St. Catherine somewhere, definitely, maybe in Linstead somewhere, maybe in Newarton as it was cited. Not really sure. But any help, even if it's from the registrar department. Unfortunately, I don't know when she would have died, and none of the family members can remember anything exact. My grandmother said that she thought the hospitalization happened in January 1975. Even that I can't truly bank on, because she's now closer to 90 and she's doing this all from memory. So if she would have been admitted in January 1975, then she would have likely died somewhere in January 1975, or depending if it's the end of the month, February of 1975. Not sure. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you can help. Either way, leave me a comment or a like, and subscribe to my channel. But when you do so, make sure you click that notification bar so you don't miss my updates, because I will update as I go on. Thanks, guys. Take care.